I have a very personal description of Ted, my best friend.
He is an international relations role model because he knows how, I mean, Ted has been all over the world, and he always was able to go wherever it was and be accepted. And he was accepted everywhere because he was and is an accepting person.
He loves to take outrageous positions on issues to see how people will react. And a lot of people think he's serious about it. But one good way to tell that he's pulling your leg is when his wife Kathy says, "Now, Ted." And at that point, Ted gets this big grin on his face and says, "Okay."
Ted is a very funny guy. And he also would do things like he made me go to the market and look at things that I didn't want to look at in the market, you know. And I said, I know they eat dogs here, but I don't really want to see it. He said, "You're here and you're going to see it, and come with me."
Not only is he amazingly bright, but he has integrity that is so obvious to everybody who's around him. And Ted cares about people.
Service to the community of the world is what we ought to be about, and it's what Ted's about. And he uses his law degree in a way that serves the world.
Ted really likes these foreign assignments. In fact, he's looking for another one right now, or they're looking for him. So I really hope he's going to be here for the dinner, because he might get another offer, and if Ted gets an offer, he's gone.
Ted and I met when I was a freshman law student, and he had just returned from New York City. I was about 6 years older than Ted, and of course I had to respect him because he was my professor. But that was easy. But Ted and I really bonded, and we've really been soulmates over the years. We're very, very close friends. And in fact, he's almost like a brother to me.
Ted is very much the diplomat. And he was always a little worried that I was going to say or do something that I shouldn't. And that became kind of a mantra with us. Vietnam was very important to me, particularly because I had met with Vietnamese in Indonesia in 1965. And I felt a real love for this country and for what had happened there. But he didn't want me to tell anyone about that. Well, don't tell him about that because you don't know what their politics are now. And he was always very nervous about it. And I always took his lead, and I figured he knows a lot more about this than I do. But I discovered that the vice president of Vietnam at that time, Madame Nguyen Thu Binh, was someone I had met in the 60s. And I said to him, "I'm sure it's the same person. Why don't we see if we can see her?" And he said, "All right." He said, "Okay." When he talked to people and they said, "Okay," they said, "It's okay. We'll write her a letter." And so I started drafting this letter, and Ted didn't like it at all. And he basically drafted the letter. And I said, "You write the letter, I'll sign it." And he said, "We would need to say it this way." And he's a diplomat, what do I know? So we did, and then we went and met with her, and it was really an incredibly wonderful experience. We all went to the palace.
I first met Ted here in the halls of this law school. I'd just been hired to start teaching here, and Fred Hart was the dean, and he was giving me a tour of the law school. My wife Robin was with me, and this guy walks down the hall, and Fred Hart says, "Let me introduce you to one of your colleagues. This is Ted Parnall." And my wife said, "Twink?" And he said, "Yes, Twink." And it turns out that Ted's first cousin in Rochester, who went by the nickname of Twink, was a classmate of Robin's in high school and was one of her best friends. So we didn't know we had that connection until we arrived here in New Mexico.
Ted helped lay the foundations of what this law school is today. He and a very elite group of faculty members who were here in the late 60s and 70s really built the foundation of the school. And Ted's 5 years as dean just were fabulous. He reached out across New Mexico and made contacts with networks of lawyers who had never been involved with the law school before. And the reach, the scope of the reach that he developed has paid off in many ways over the years, in contributions and in many other ways for the law school politically. He also was the first dean to head the Judicial Selection Committee in New Mexico.
When he found out, and we found out, that the dean of the law school was going to be chairing all of the judicial selection commissions, most of the faculty said, "Oh no," and Ted said, "Oh yes."
He really got it off the ground and started it, and it was a wonderful vehicle for the law school to become more visible to the legal community and the public and the future judges who were being selected.
I think the most important impact that Ted had as dean was his willingness to get the law school into expand into different projects, like starting the U.S.-Mexico Law Institute and the U.S.-Mexico Law Journal, the Guanajuato program that was started when he was dean. People would come to him with ideas, and his sort of attitude was, well, let's try it. You know, why not?
He's diplomatic in his personal life. He's just diplomatic. He would have made a great ambassador. And he's also very funny. He's very smart, but he's also very funny, and he likes to be funny, and he likes to put you in a situation where he says, "See, you could really do that. Wasn't that a cool thing to do that you didn't expect it to be?"
Ted is a classic contrarian. And to understand that, you've sort of got to understand his logic. A proposition is related, if a proposition is related to another proposition in such a way that if the latter is true, the former must be false. But if the latter is false, the former is not necessarily true. Confusing? Exactly. Exactly. That's what Ted wants. You never know where Ted is coming from. All you can be sure of is he's probably going to disagree with you and test you and see how much you really know about the subject. It's a big game with him, and it's one reason people love him so much.
Well, one of Ted's greatest strengths is his ability to understand different people, different cultures, and his ability to communicate with them. In fact, I remember him telling me once that he attributes this skill to growing up in the South Valley of Albuquerque. He went to Rio Grande High School, and he said he was one of the few Anglos in this Hispanic school, and that if he didn't learn how to communicate and to be diplomatic, he would have been beaten up. And he said that skill has really served him well when he goes to countries like Vietnam, Indonesia, Kosovo, or Afghanistan, where he's dealing with people and he treats them with respect and he understands where they're coming from, and he's very diplomatic, and he attributes that all to the skills that he learned growing up in the South Valley.
It was very impressive from the way Ted interacted with people, because he was never an ugly American. He was always humble. He was always accepting of wherever we were and whatever it was we were supposed to do. We went on a trip one day and we were instructed to go rest for 2 hours. And he never said, "Well, I don't want to rest for 2 hours in this room." He just said, "That's the custom and that's what we're going to do." And he did that about everything, which was, you know, and he has remained friends with these people all these years later.
Anyone who knows Ted knows he's a real macho guy. You know, Ted's not afraid of anything. I mean, Ted is the guy who goes to Afghanistan, to Kabul, Kyrgyzstan. They're having civil wars, they're fighting, they're blowing cars up. Ted doesn't care. He loves it. These are places with abject poverty. These are places where they've had civil war, open warfare. Ted would do anything because he was committed to bring the legal principles that have worked so well in this country to all of the third world and developed countries who really had no understanding of those legal principles and justice and equality and opportunity like we have in this country. He truly was an ambassador, not only of the state, but our country. And I think he spread what is good about America all over the world at great risk to himself.
When we were in Indonesia, we went to this restaurant and Ted had ordered a suckling pig, one with an apple in its mouth, and he asked that the whole thing be brought to our table. And with the carving knives, he didn't want them to carve it, he wanted to carve it himself. And while he was carving it, that apple shot out of the mouth of that suckling pig and landed right on my wife's dress. And he was so apologetic, he just reached over there and just grabbed that apple and stuffed it back into the mouth, and then proceeded to carve the suckling pig, which was very good.
His sense of family is very, very deep. He has many, many grandchildren. Kathy has been just a wonderful, wonderful soulmate for Ted, because she has loved everything they've done. I mean, in Vietnam, she was singing opera class productions with Vietnamese people, people who come to Albuquerque to visit with them. So what Ted did, he didn't do by himself. He did with his family, and his entire family participated, benefited, and helped him spread the message that I think Ted was determined to take to those third world countries.
In my view, Ted is a perfect person for this award because he spans so much of what it means to be a lawyer.
His career has been really extraordinary. He's got a great deal of respect internationally and here in the state and in the school. I forgot to mention, but it shouldn't. Ted also has 3 sons, all of whom are lawyers, and 2 of them are law school graduates of the University of New Mexico. So his connection goes to this law school is really deep in many, many ways.